me, Tischler, founder of New Horizons Golf Approach. Some of you asked me to talk about the swivel technique and how you maintain an anchored swivel technique. In another video, I showed the basic swivel action. If you remember, I talked about establishing your primary tilt with your spine angle, then your secondary tilt. And as long as you had that posture set up with that secondary tilt, you could create a swivel action where you would stay in posture as you're swiveling, and you would build your basic swing around that. Well, if you want to make sure you do it in an anchored manner, you have to set up with that anchor in mind as well as the swivel action in mind. So for example, a front anchor golfer will step in with their left foot first, then their right, then their left. From here, they're going to go ahead and bump their hips forward, pushing the right knee and the hip forward towards the target. You can see what's happened there is that has created secondary tilt. Here's the vertical line that I started with. As I bump forward, I now have secondary tilt. If I maintain that swivel action by rotating around my left hip joint, by feeling the glute of my right glute rotate behind me, you'll see it's like taking this side of the shaft right here and pushing that hip around. Well, that's what that front anchor swivel action looks like. So the first thing I have to do is set up that secondary tilt in my posture. Then as I swivel, I have to maintain that action. It feels like the rear end's rotating towards the target when golfers do this. So it looks something like this. Okay, so what about the right anchor swivel action? When I get set up as a right anchor golfer, I'm going to go ahead and step in with that right foot first, then my left, then my right. Now from here, I'm actually going to feel my whole spine tilt to the right. You can see that puts my sternum closer to my right foot. I have secondary tilt that's leaning to the right now. As I rotate, I feel like as I swivel, everything's swiveling right around that right hip joint right now. My left side's coming around towards my right side. I'm actually swiveling around that right hip joint. So here's that swivel action. I'm simply doing it with a right anchor setup position and right anchor balance as I swivel. Let's see what that looks like when I play a golf shot. Okay, so what about the center anchor golfer? How does the center anchor golfer set up their posture so that they can keep that swivel action in a center anchor manner? They step in with their feet together, left and right. Make sure we have that primary tilt first. From there, I'm going to move my hips a little bit forward and my sternum a little bit back. By moving my hips a little forward, my sternum back, that keeps me in a 50-50 weight distribution at address. However, it also gives me that secondary tilt I need so that I can swivel in posture. Once again, once I get set up, all I'm trying to do is feel my hips, in making a swivel action, feeling my posture, stay in posture as I swivel, and that allows me to have that nice swiveling action in my golf swing. Let's go ahead and see what it looks like for the center anchor golfers to create that swivel action. Okay, now as you view these, you may see only a slight difference between them, because the reality is we are trying to set up that posture with a good amount of secondary tilt so that it makes it very easy for us to swivel in posture. The only difference is I'm actually stepping into it left foot first for the front anchor and getting myself bumped into that left hip joint so I can swivel around that left hip joint as my head counterbalances the action for the front anchor one. The rear anchor one, I'm stepping in right foot first, getting my weight into that right hip joint, then I'm tilting my spine to the right. So now it makes it very easy for me to swivel around my right hip joint as I stay in posture and as my head counterbalances that action. Lastly, as a center anchor golfer, I step in 50-50 first. I get that 50-50 weight distribution when I widen my stance. From there, I bump my hips forward, my sternum back. That keeps me in that 50-50 weight distribution. Allows me once again to swivel in posture in a center anchor manner as my head counterbalances that action. So if you feel like you perform best with that swivel technique, I recommend go ahead and keep using it. However, find out where your best balance point is and learn to create that swivel action with good posture, having secondary tilt, and utilizing the balance point you have for swiveling in posture. Some final notes on how you should go about setting up your anchor and understanding how that relates to your swing technique. Keep in mind, once you've identified where the best balance point is in your body, whether it's your left hip joint, your right hip joint, your center of gravity, you want to make sure that you set up with that balance point in mind. Additionally, keep in mind that everything happens in a matter of degrees. You can be very right anchor, partly right anchor, right of center. You can be very centered, you can be left of center, or you can be very front anchor. So different people have different balance points, and you got to figure out which one fits you the best. Once you understand what that balance point is, you want to make sure you get set up with that balance point in mind. From there, you use your head as a counterbalance point, and whatever action you perform from that point on is going to stay anchored as long as your head stays counterbalanced and your feet stay in the same basic position they started. So go ahead and find out what your balance point is. Make sure that you set up to accommodate that balance point, and then whether you're using a pendulum action, a swivel action, a wheelhouse action, whatever type of action, make sure you keep your head counterbalancing that action.